Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for week 8 of Big Game Bound. We've got another jam-packed show for you. We'll check in with our NFL analyst, Jared Payton. Does he agree or disagree with the Dolphins benching Ryan Fitzpatrick? We'll also call on our analysts to break down some of the biggest matchups in week 8. Steelers at Ravens, 49ers at Seahawks, and Bears at Saints. Our big guest is the man behind Al Michaels' microphone. COVID pushed Brad Curtis into retirement. He shares some memories of working some of the biggest events in sports. And we'll check in with the Wizard of Odds, Kenny White. We'll start with the insights of Jared Payton. He joins us from Chicago. Jared, want to start with those Miami Dolphins. They went into the bye week having won 3 of their last 4. They climb into the race in the AFC East, and then they benched Ryan Fitzpatrick in favor of Tua. Does this move make sense?
In some ways it does, Jack. In some ways it doesn't. I can understand, especially when you see a lot of these other organizations around the league, starting their young quarterbacks, and especially guys that are drafted high. We see it with the Bengals, and I can understand that they want to do this, but it's still rough. When your team is moving and you have some momentum, maybe you want to stick with what is working at that moment. And with Fitzpatrick, he's a guy that's a veteran that's been around the league for a long time and has a lot of respect inside of that Miami Dolphins locker room. But we knew that Tua was just kind of waiting in the wings. But when you look at, guys like Patrick Mahomes, having time to sit there and understand and learn the offense, also learn the game, and not just on the field, but off the field, I think that helps build character for your franchise quarterback as well. So for me, I would have stayed with Fitzpatrick, but I totally understand why they want to make the move with Tua and knowing that he's the future. But right now, you're looking at Fitzmagic. I would ride that all the way out to the end.
Yeah, he said he was heartbroken. Sometimes you hear guys just being upset. He was heartbroken. He's got a lot of respect in that Dolphins locker room. How does this sit with other Dolphin players, and what does Tua have to do to make sure this does not implode?
Well, the one thing Tua's going to have to do is win football games. He's got to show that progression and getting better every single week. And there's going to be some bumps and bruises and some roadblocks to jump over during the time. But I think that's what you're going to get with a rookie quarterback. And any rookie player in the NFL, they're going to have those struggles. I think for Fitzmagic, he understands as well. Like, he knew this was going to be coming. And inside that locker room, Jack, there's going to be guys that were Fitzpatrick fans, and there's other guys that want to see Tua on the field. And it's normally split 50-50. But if you can win football games and Tua can show that he can be that player that he was at Alabama and take it to another level, I don't think anybody's going to really care.
All right, Russell Wilson proved to be human. 3 picks, a costly one in overtime. Seahawks suffer their first loss to the Cardinals. And Arizona improves to 5-2. How good is that team?
Well, when you have Kyler Murray, anything is possible. And I told you this a couple weeks ago when I was looking at teams and trying to figure out, I was saying that they depend on him way too much. But that's another kind of, another young quarterback that you're seeing that has the ability to be able to not only take over games, but also just elevate everybody else that's around him. And so I think the Cardinals, they move when he moves. And if he can keep on putting up big numbers and put up big time games, I think it's going to give them an opportunity out west. But out west, it is tough. A lot of good football teams out there, they are going to have to show that they can stand above the rest. But when you have great quarterback play, anything is possible.
Only one undefeated team left in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are they the best team in the league?
Ooh, I knew you were going to ask me this question, Jack. It's hard. I mean, when you look at their record and what they've done, it's outstanding. I mean, I think one of the biggest keys coming into this season and the question marks was Ben Roethlisberger and how he was going to be coming back from injury. And he has shown that he is ready to go. And, as he moves, that offense moves. But you love seeing how they're spreading the ball around everywhere and able to not only run the ball, but pass the ball. So the balance is there on the offensive side of the ball. And the defense, when they need to stop the run, they can stop the run. I'm going to go with, I think they're one of the best 3 teams in the NFL. I'm not going to say that they're the best because I still think everybody has to figure out a way to be able to beat Kansas City. And I think the best player on the planet is wearing a Kansas City Chiefs jersey. And I might sprinkle in, if it's not just those 2 teams, I don't know. It's hard. Those 2 teams to me seem like the 2 teams that are running away with the best teams in the league.
Jared, I know the game you'll be covering for WGN in Chicago, Bears and Saints this week. This Bears offense, what's up with that?
Every single game, Jack, I'm trying to figure out, can this Bears offense find a balance? They haven't been able to find a balance. Only 49 yards against the Rams, and they were going up against a good front seven with Aaron Donald and company, but still, it was prime time. They knew what was at stake. They knew everybody was watching, and they still could not get it done. I think some of it comes with, execution of the plays, and some comes with the play calling. I think Matt Nagy has to take a little responsibility here when it comes to the struggles, but it comes down to the offensive line. The Bears' offensive line was pieced together with some Band-Aids, and right now we're starting to see that if you don't address that problem in that position, you're going to have situations like this where you have a defense that's bend, don't break, but also at some point they're going to break, and your offense is going to have to be able to put up points on the board. And it's hard to see a Saints team and look at other teams around the NFL that are putting up 30 points a game. And look at Monday Night Football, your defense was your best offense. And anytime that's happening, you definitely have a lot of issues that are going on, especially inside of that Bears locker room right now.
The game of the week in the NFL in Week 8 takes place in Baltimore. The 6-0 Steelers take on the 5-1 Ravens. Jay Pushkar is their Steelers correspondent. He joins us. Jay, first they dismantled the Browns, then they held off the Titans. Now they have to face the Ravens. Does it feel like the Steelers are already in playoff mode?
Well, Jack, it certainly feels that way, at least with the schedule. Early on in the first 3 or 4 games of the season, when you take a look at the overall records, it's been a weak schedule for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they're not going to complain about that schedule maker either. But the last 2 or 3 weeks, as you mentioned, the Browns, the Ravens, and on paper we thought early on maybe the Cowboys, but that's starting to not be the case. But this is certainly a gauntlet of games when you factor in, even coming off the big win against the Tennessee Titans, that this does start to feel like a playoff stretch. But let's just keep in mind, we're only reaching the halfway point of a regular season, and if you were to talk to head coach Mike Tomlin about that type of question, it is literally 1 week at a time. They've got a lot of work ahead of them and a lot of things that they still need to polish up to keep going. Even though they are undefeated, there's still a lot of things that they have to improve on.
Yeah, this Titans win, it was a tale of 2 halves for Big Ben. Great in the first half, a little sloppy in the second. I know they're 6-0, but does Ben need to elevate his game for the Steelers to win this AFC North?
Not necessarily. I mean, we saw what the Steelers were capable of doing last year when you had Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges as your quarterbacks. Guys around them rallied and really elevated their games, especially defensively, and they had a terrific season considering the rash of injuries that they had. Now that you bring in a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a future Hall of Famer back into the mix, he really doesn't have to push the envelope so much, but as we saw last week against the Titans, Roethlisberger has that gunslinger mentality. He wants to try to still make those throws that may or may not be there. And even though they had those 3 interceptions, it really didn't hurt them in that contest. But the fact that Ben has to elevate his game, I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. I think what they've got right now is a perfect formula. They run the football. They've got great backs out of the backfield. They consistently get close to the 100-yard rushing mark. And, of course, on the other side of the ball, they've got a tremendous defense. So with the time of possession and being able to have a great defense, that's been the winning formula so far. And then for Ben to try to throw it around the field, it seems like each and every week a different wide receiver is stepping up, and last week it was Deontay Johnson really stepping up and having a big game for the Steelers.
Steelers lost Devin Bush, but still did a great job of holding down Derrick Henry. Will his loss be felt more against a running quarterback like Lamar Jackson?
I think maybe in due time, and especially how the course of the regular season pans out with other injuries that may or may not pop up, but you get the likes of a Vince Williams really starting to play well at the linebacker position, not to mention Robert Spillane, who came in for Devin Bush. Even though he got nicked up in the Tennessee game, he played admirably in that contest too, and just the overall mentality for this Steelers franchise is just the next man up. And we saw that last week against the Titans, and this run defense has been outstanding. outstanding. I mean, we could even date this all the way back to the Week 1 matchup against the Giants and the way they handled Saquon Barkley. I mean, they really do a great job, and it starts with that front line, a guy like Cam Hayward, and then it trickles down into the linebacking core. And then the secondary does get challenged, but guys are certainly stepping up on that front. But I think the collective unit, this defense is still pretty solid, even though they did lose Devin Bush for the rest of the season because of that ACL tear.
All right, big game this week against Baltimore. What's the formula for a Steeler victory?
Well, right off the bat, at least for Pittsburgh, ball control. If they can keep that time of possession in their favor and keep Lamar Jackson off the field, that's going to be a huge possible victory for them on that front. You know, they're capable of doing it. We saw it last week in their opening drive against the Titans. A 9+ minute drive, and better yet, they were able to punch it into the end zone for a touchdown to really set the tone on the road. And they're going to need to do that again this coming week against the Ravens. And not knowing what the weather conditions could be, you know, protection of the football is going to be extremely critical, too, for two teams that like to run the football as much as they do. But the time of possession, I think, is going to be the biggest factor for the Steelers if they're going to try to walk away with another victory, also have that tiebreaker advantage within the division, and more importantly, stay undefeated in the NFL with a very, very easy schedule ahead of them in the weeks to come.
Let's bring in our Ravens correspondent, Damon Turbot. How well timed, Damon, was this bye week for the Ravens?
If you would ask me maybe after the third quarter of that Eagles game, I would have said maybe poorly timed because they had played so well against Cincinnati. They were playing so well against the Eagles, and all of a sudden things just sort of seemed to collapse a little bit. So with that being said, and of course, given who's going to be coming up this week, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would say it's a good time to recalibrate a bit, both mentally and physically. Of course, you have some injuries on that Ravens squad. So overall, I would have to say it was probably some pretty good timing for this bye week.
Damon, Ravens are next to last in the league in passing yardage. Are they going to just try and run the ball down people's throat, or is there concern about this passing game?
Well, if they chose to rush it down people's throats, I don't think it would be a bad thing. We've seen how effective they can be running the ball, how multiple they are, to use that word. But maybe this week isn't perhaps the week to try to start doing that because the Steelers' run defense has been great. Last week, I believe it was 20 carries, 75 yards for the all-world running back, Derrick Henry. So maybe this week also isn't the best choice. And when you consider that Mark Ingram still isn't necessarily a go this week, maybe rushing the ball isn't the best. Now, concerned about the passing game, I think you have to be when you consider how well Lamar Jackson played in all phases of the game last year and even in the first couple weeks this year. The last time we talked, I said I would take him over Patrick Mahomes. And since then, for some reason, I think I've cursed him. He's kind of gone downhill in terms of the passing numbers. So I don't think you want to take the confidence away from a reigning MVP, but at the same time, if you're running the ball better than you're throwing the ball, you maybe stick with your bread and butter a little bit more this week.
All right, so Lamar Jackson's struggles are all your fault, David. In a league where scoring is up, the Ravens have only allowed 20 points to an opponent twice this season, to the Chiefs and the Eagles. But we're not hearing a lot about this Ravens defense nationally. How good is this defense?
Jack, it's pretty funny because if maybe 2-3 years ago you were talking about the Ravens, their identity for the longest time was defense, defense, defense. That's all you talked about. Now it's been more of the offense with Lamar Jackson here, and now all of a sudden we're not talking about the defense anymore. We've left it behind, but the defense is pretty good this year. I believe they're leading the NFL right now in scoring defense. Their turnovers, I believe that they're top 3 in turnovers forced, and they're scoring points off of those turnovers. I also should mention Pittsburgh and Baltimore are the 2 leading sack teams in the NFL. So these guys are aggressive. They force turnovers, which obviously you're going to need to do in a big game like this. And they hold teams to just a short or a small amount of points. So I would have to say maybe it's time to start talking a little bit more about that defense. And when you get in one of these grinded out sort of AFC North Classic games, especially the ones you see between the Steelers and the Ravens, I think that defense is going to have a bigger chance to be on display this week.
Yeah, I expect some physicality in this game. What's the recipe for a Ravens win over the Steelers?
Well, first of all, I think the Titans taught a pretty good lesson last week, and it's not to go down 20 points early in the game because they were almost able to come back and win the game, or at least tie it and bring it to overtime, missed it by about that much. So I think it's key to not get behind by much. 2, not let Roethlisberger get in a groove. Keep pressure on him because you know he struggles and sometimes makes poor decisions when he's getting rushed. And as the Ravens have done all year, got to force the turnovers. I think that's going to be huge for them. I think whoever wins this turnover battle this weekend is going to emerge victorious because it always just comes down to a couple of plays with these guys.
Another key game is from the NFC this week. The banged up but surging 49ers travel to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, who are coming off their first loss. Kate Rooney is our 49ers correspondent, joins us from San Francisco. Kate, when this team was routed by the Dolphins in Week 5, they were 2-3. Jimmy G was a mess, and the injuries were mounting. How have they turned it around?
Yeah, well, I think for a while there, it certainly looked like they weren't going to be able to turn things around, right? Jimmy didn't look confident. The offensive line was struggling a great deal. The secondary was a mess. And what really helped them was being able to get a couple key guys back and healthy, even just for a short period of time. Deebo Samuel getting healthy again, being able to be out there. Of course, now he's back out with a hamstring injury. Getting Emmanuel Mosley back to bolster that secondary was a big deal for them. And Jason Barrett has been performing really, really well on the secondary as well. So being able to have some of those guys kind of rise to the occasion, I think helped the team build their confidence, and that win over the Rams was a good start. And then, of course, getting it done, dismantling the Patriots the way they did this past Sunday was a really big deal for this team. Helped give them a little bit of that confidence that they need to progress throughout the season and feel like they're still in contention in the NFC West.
Yeah, this stretch of schedule now is brutal. Their next 5 opponents, the Seahawks, Packers, Saints, Rams, and Bills, are 23-8 combined. How do they survive these next 5 weeks?
It's going to be tough. It really is kind of the gauntlet of their schedule. I mean, you look back on the previous couple weeks and you think, all right, of course they were able to get those couple wins back on the East Coast against the Jets and the Giants. They probably should have beaten the Eagles and Miami if they really wanted to be considered a threat to make it back to the Super Bowl for a second straight year. But now you look at the teams they've got to take on. You said it, the Saints, the Packers, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Bills. The good thing is, Jack, that they have a lot of experience with all of these teams. Of course, they get to see the Seahawks and the Rams twice a year, every year. They've played both these opponents tough every single time for the last couple of seasons. And then they played the Packers and the Saints both last season, beat both those teams last season. So they're really familiar with the personnel. I feel like they have the confidence going against those teams to know that they got it done last year, they can get it done again. Of course, you're looking at a little bit of a different situation, right? Because take the Packers, for example. Devontae Adams coming off an absolute monster game. Aaron Rodgers has been looking like vintage Aaron Rodgers in most of the games this season. And the 49ers are really decimated when you look at the injuries they have. So it's not exactly apples to apples when you're looking at the way they took them on last year. But I think that the 49ers are going to have to do what they've done in the face of injuries time and time again. Summon that energy, rely on some of their players who might not be those stars, those bigger names, to come through and hope that they can step up in those situations. If they can get through this piece of their schedule, then it calms down a little bit towards the end of the season again. And if they're looking to vie for seeding position in the playoffs there, I think that doing well in this stretch of schedule would really benefit them if they can make it happen.
One guy that always seems to step up for the 49ers, George Kittle. How much does this team feed off of him?
Oh, he's everything, right? I mean, this is a guy who just has so much energy to spare, energy to pass off to everybody else. And you see it time and time again. The way that he explodes after a catch. You know, the 49ers have this nickname now, the Yak Boys, yards after catch boys, because it's not just Kittle, but some of these other receivers just really get a quick step on these defenders and are so explosive after that first catch. And nobody personifies that better than George Kittle. So it's not just his leadership in the locker room, which is crazy. We haven't been in the locker room this year as media members to get to see it, but you know he's out there still spreading that love to all his teammates. But it's also just what he does on the field, the grit with which he plays, the fact that every time it takes 3 defenders to take him down. And it seems like almost every time he's in the game, when the 49ers are having a successful opening drive, you can count on at least one big, long connection from Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle, and that just really sets the tone for the rest of the team. He's a great leader on and off the field, and he has really personified the fiery personality and the fun-loving approach to the game that these 49ers have.
Yeah, it's almost like he's insulted if you try and tackle him. Are the 49ers really the inspiration behind National Tight Ends Day?
Yeah, they are. Although, believe it or not, it actually didn't really start with George Kittle. Jimmy Garoppolo kind of started National Tight Ends Day. It was actually after the now retired tight end Garrett Selleck caught a touchdown pass back in 2018, and Jimmy Garoppolo, just trying to fire his guys up, was like, hey, it's National Tight Ends Day. Well, they picked that up and they rolled with it. The NFL kind of got wind of that little joke that they had going. They loved it. They declared the third Sunday in October National National Tight Ends Day going forward. So last year was the inaugural National Tight Ends Day, and then this year, of course, everyone was all abuzz with it. And it's great because we've seen the evolution of the tight end over the years in the NFL, right? It used to be a lot about blocking, and now you just have to be a pass-catching tight end. And some of these guys, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, they're the most prolific receivers on their team. So give these guys credit where credit is due. I think it's super fun, and it's a cool thing that we get to say that it did originate right here in San Francisco.
Kenny White is the Wizard of Odds. He's an odds maker, a sports market analyst. You'll see him on CBS Sportsline. He's also the publisher of Kenny White's College Football Power Ratings. You can get that in a PDF or a 3-hole binder. He predicts the final score for every college football game. We've got a lot of that now, and basically tells you what the odds and the total should be for each game. And he joins us every week from Las Vegas. Kenny, great to have you again. When's the last time you have seen a line on an NFL game like the one we're seeing on the Chiefs-Jets for this Sunday?
Jack, I didn't have to go back very far. Last year in week 3, there were 2 games with a 20-point spread. The Patriots were a 21-point favorite over the New York Jets, who are playing this week. And then also the Dallas Cowboys were a 22-point favorite over the Miami Dolphins in week 3 last year. But it's rare, though. It is very rare, and that's why you asked me the question. Since 1978, that's what, let me do the math, 42 years, there's only been 13 occasions where a team has been a 20-point favorite in the NFL. The underdogs have done very well in those games, 10-3 ATS for the underdog in those big point spreads.
Really? I'm a little surprised by that, but I guess I shouldn't be. How much do you expect that line to move before kickoff? Do people typically jump at numbers like this or avoid them?
Avoid them. The handle's usually lower on games with this high of a point spread. But you know what? The public will be playing the Chiefs. They'll have the Chiefs in every parlay. There'll be money lined teasers, and it'll be all Chiefs money. There'll be very little money on the Jets in this game, other than from professional bettors that understand the trend of 10-3 ATS, that this is the NFL. Teams aren't here to run scores up. They're just there to win games, get out healthy, and get on to the next week. So, but I think this will take in some action, but not big action.
Boy, the Jets have been really, really bad. Matt Stafford led the Lions to a last-second win over the Falcons on Sunday, his 30th fourth-quarter comeback. How good could his career have been if he was on a consistently good team?
Yeah, what a shame. Is he the Dan Marino of our time? Because he has had some great years, just has not had the weapons around him, hasn't had the defense that he needs. He's done the job, coming back. He is the master of the comeback. 30 times. That is just amazing. He did it again on Sunday. I would have to say, yeah, if he was on another team, I hate to say it, if he was on maybe the Cowboys for all those years, he might have 2 or 3 rings by now.
All right, in your time as a fan or working as an analyst in this business, which quarterback do you most want to have the ball in his hands late in a game with a game on the line?
Great question. I think the guy I'd want to have would be Joe Montana. We're going back a ways now, but Joe Montana was unbelievable with the 49ers. And, I guess that even the transition to Steve Young, I would take Steve Young. Mentioned Marino's another great one, and you can't leave out Tom Brady. Those would be my 4. I would have to give you 4 guys that I'll take any one of the 4. And now in this day and age, Patrick Mahomes would be the guy I would want with the football.
Those are all very good choices, especially like Montana there. Kenny, I know you know your college football, and you're a wealth of information come draft time. Is Trevor Lawrence the guy that you're taking and you're tanking for at this point?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the 2021 draft. This is going to be fun. Trevor Lawrence is number 1, yes. He's the guy I would go after, number 1 pick in the NFL draft.
Who are the top 5 or, the quarterbacks right now that you see that can step in from the college ranks?
Yeah, well, Justin Fields for Ohio State, he started out with a bang. He's going to be he's probably the 2nd pick. I think they'll go 1-2 this year, Lawrence and then Fields. And then there's several other quarterbacks that could follow in. This year, we may get a record number of quarterbacks in the first round. Trey Lance from North Dakota State is a great athlete. He ran for 1,100 yards last year, threw 28 touchdowns, 0 INTs. He's only played one game this year, and I think it's the only game he's going to play. He did finally throw an interception in his college career, so I think he finishes with 30 touchdowns, 1 INT, over 1,000 yards rushing. He's got big-time arm strength, and he's got great mobility. A couple other guys, Zach Wilson from BYU, Kyle Trask from Florida, and Jamie Newman didn't play this year. He transferred from Wake Forest to Georgia. He could be a late first-round draft pick.
Our big guest this week is somebody you probably have never heard of, and that's just the way he likes it. It means he's done his job. Brad Curtis just retired from a career that took him all over the world, many times over. He was a sound engineer for ABC's Wide World of Sports for Monday Night Football. He worked on 11 Olympics, 13 Super Bowls, and the job he just retired from was NBC's Sunday Night Football. COVID played a big part in his decision.
I hit a very rough patch when I was agonizing about making that decision. You know, I mean, it was really, really hard for me.
Brad was hoping to work 2 more years and walk into the sunset after NBC hosts the Super Bowl in 2022.
Everybody assumes that Al is going to bow out after the Super Bowl, okay? And I was like, you know, I'll march behind him into the bowels of hell, you know, and I don't want to, you know, jump out and stick him with somebody he doesn't know.
After working for Al Michaels for more than 20 years, Brad's the guy that handed him his mic. They developed a great friendship.
It's a comfortable thing, you know. We've been together for 25 years, him and me. You know, we're like we bitch at each other like an old married couple, you know, which we both look at. It's a game, you know, it's fun. But, you know, it was the whole COVID thing, you know, and, you know, I spend my life, in airports, hotel rooms, and airplanes, you know, and those are 3 of the top 10 categories of, you know, where you can catch this, right? And I was like, well, I got a target on my back. I'm 66 years old now. I wanted to make it across the finish line with him, you know, and it was a very, very difficult decision and a very hard thing for me to do. I talked back and forth with him a lot in trying to make this decision, you know, and he was like, Brad, you know, don't think about me, think about yourself, you know. He's really, truly a good guy. Honestly, there were late nights where I'm sitting up there with my face in my hands just crying like a 5-year-old because I don't want to do this, but I have to do this, you know. Just to save my own life, I have to do this. You know?
What did you love about this job?
I would have to say what I enjoyed the most is the camaraderie with everybody I work with, you know. I'm old. I got 4 living relatives left, and they're spread out all over the place. And so consequently, these 200 people on my show, they have become my default family, okay? And it wasn't just leaving Al that bothered me, is that I'm never going to see most of these people ever again.
Do you get that game day buzz that people get, you know, when they're at a big event? Or is it just a job for you? Are you at times realizing just how big the magnitude of this play or this game is?
It's just another day at the office for me. You know, I tell people that when, you know, they realize what I do, you got the greatest job in the world. Like, and I'm like, let's see. I could give a rat's butt about the NFL, you know. Don't care. Don't follow any teams in the NFL. My attitude is, you know, I'm here to do a television show, not watch a football game.
Spread around Brad's home are keepsakes from his career. A vast assortment of credentials and hats, autographed pictures from some of the people he's worked with. Michaels, Madden, Collinsworth. There's too many to count. But the thing he cherishes most resides in his basement and makes the ultimate man cave. that is the last set ever used on Monday Night Football when it aired on ABC from the Super Bowl in Detroit. There's probably a lot of guys that would love something like that in their man cave. How were you able to get that? It's from which Super Bowl?
Which one? Oh, the last one, Detroit. Okay. That was, like I said, that was the last gasp of ABC Sports. And I mean, that's, like I said, the story totally, the reason I have it is because I was pretty much the last man standing and nobody else wanted anything to do with it. So I rolled it up, loaded it in my truck, and brought it home.
How fun is it to see the reaction when people see this?
It was like, whoa, dude, that's astounding. You know what you really need? I'm like, yeah, I know what I need. I need 2 cardboard stand-ups. I'm like, yes, that's what you need. And now I finally do. This project is through. You know, those are the pièces de résistance, you know.
That'll do it for Week 8 of Big Game Bound. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to our guests, Jared Payton, Jay Pushkar, Damon Turbett, Kate Rooney, Brad Curtis, and Kenny White. For our producer, Spencer Wheelock, and the rest of our crew here in Grand Rapids, have a great weekend and enjoy the big games. We'll see you next week.